An ex-K9 handler returns home with a new dog, but the moment his retired partner Ranger spots the man traveling with them, all hell breaks loose. A suitcase, a bite of buried past, and the start of a gripping unraveling. What Ranger remembers may save lives, or destroy what's left. This isn't just about loyalty, it's about what happens when instincts refuse to forget. If you're into real emotional high-stakes stories and subscribe now, you won't want to miss what comes next. The morning light over JFK International Airport was sharp and clear, spilling across the terminals in golden stripes and making the polished tiles gleam like a fresh start. Tyler Cross adjusted the worn leather strap of his duffel bag and whistled low for Bolt, the 2-year-old Belgian Malinois, who trotted loyally at his side. Bolt, still new to the role of companion, walked with a light spring, his harness clicking softly against his chest. Tyler, dressed in a soft gray hoodie and jeans, didn't look like someone who had spent 15 years in the military, 10 of which were beside a dog trained for war. But there were signs if you looked closely, his alert gaze, the measured way he moved through crowds, the quiet confidence that spoke of someone who had learned to rely on instinct over comfort. This trip wasn't supposed to be complicated. It was a homecoming. After years on the move from dusty bases in Kandahar to the training fields of Fort Bliss, Tyler was finally going home. Vermont, a modest farmhouse passed down from his mother, overgrown with ivy and memories. He was flying there with Bolt, making a stop at JFK to transfer airlines. Victor Martinez, an old friend from Fort Carson and now a security manager for Airspan Logistics, had offered to meet him during the layover and help navigate the chaos of the transfer. Tyler had welcomed the help. After all, Victor had been his teammate once, someone he trusted, or thought he did. The terminal bustled with the peculiar rhythm of travel-rushed steps, tired children overhead, announcements echoing like distant calls to action. Tyler leaned down and gave Bolt a scratch behind the ear. "Just a few more hours, bud," he murmured. "Then it's grass porches and squirrels you'll never catch." Victor approached from the far end of the terminal, dressed sharp in a blazer over jeans, laminated badge clipped to his chest. His confident stride and easy smile reminded Tyler of the man he used to know before Victor left the Army for the private sector, before the politics and gray areas of civilian security work. They embraced like brothers. "Still got that straight back and regulation hair, huh?" Victor chuckled. Tyler laughed. "You still play golf like you're holding a rifle." They caught up easily, falling into the kind of banter that makes you forget time has passed. But there was a flicker, just a flicker of something Tyler noticed. When Bolt was introduced, he hesitated. For a brief second, the normally excitable Malinois stiffened. His eyes narrowed, posture tense, like something in Victor's scent or presence didn't sit right. Then, just as quickly, it passed. Bolt sat tail-thumping lazily. Tyler frowned. He had seen dogs react like that before, but only to danger. Still, he shook it off. New place, new people. Maybe Bolt was just adjusting. What Tyler didn't know at that very moment, in a quiet neighborhood 2 states away, another dog, the one who had once saved his life more times than he could count, was reacting too. Ranger, an older German shepherd with a silver-streaked muzzle and deep, battle-worn eyes, had been staying with Tyler's friend Mike. After retirement, Tyler had left Ranger with Mike, believing the quiet ranch would suit the aging dog better than the constant movement of post-military life. That morning, Ranger had been dozing under the porch, old bones creaking, when the television inside flickered to a muted news segment showing JFK Airport, just B-roll footage of crowds and airplanes. But something changed. The dog bolted upright, eyes wide-nosed, twitching furiously as if he had caught the scent of something, someone through the screen. He barked, loud, urgent, unstoppable. Not the bark of boredom or excitement. A warning. Mike rushed out, startled. Hey, easy boy, what's going on?" But Ranger wouldn't stop. He pawed at the door, growled, barked again with increasing desperation. It was as if a ghost had walked into his world, as if something long buried had clawed its way back. Back at JFK, Victor was guiding Tyler through a side corridor toward a staff-only lounge near the baggage hold. "Easier to manage Bolt's crate from this side," Victor explained, scanning his badge. Less traffic. Tyler nodded, watching his old friend interact with staff. Polished. Smooth. Maybe too smooth. Bolt, on the other hand, wasn't buying it. The further they walked, the tenser he became. He slowed, sniffed the air, let out a low warning growl that rumbled in his throat like distant thunder. Tyler stopped. Hey, easy. But he didn't dismiss it this time. Bolt was trained. Bolt didn't growl for no reason. Victor turned. He all right? Tyler nodded slowly, hand resting on Bolt's back. Just alert. But he didn't move yet. His instincts, honed over years in combat zones, whispered quietly in the back of his mind. The way Victor had flinched when Bolt approached. The unfamiliar route. Bolt's unshakable tension. Where's this holding area exactly? Tyler asked. Victor smiled, but something in it was just slightly off. Just around this corner. You trust me, don't you? Tyler didn't answer right away. In his chest, a pressure was building. It wasn't fear he knew fear, but something colder. Recognition without memory. He glanced at Bolt, who hadn't taken his eyes off Victor since they started moving. I used to, Tyler said evenly. Guess we'll find out. Victor's laugh echoed lightly off the hallway walls, just a little too loud, just a little too rehearsed. Come on, Ty. You know how these dogs can be. Maybe he smelled something weird on my clothes. It's been years since Ranger's seen me right. You told me he got weird after retirement. Maybe some residual stress or trauma. Happens all the time. Dogs mix up scents, especially ones trained in combat. He patted Bolt lightly on the flank, though the dog visibly flinched. Tyler watched it all with narrowed eyes. Yeah, he said slowly, happens. But in his gut, he didn't believe a word of it. Still, he let it drop for now. The room Victor guided him into was colder than the terminal outside, lit with harsh overhead fluorescence that made everything feel sterile. It was a storage corridor near the logistics hub of the terminal where oversized or special cargo was handled before flights. Bolt's travel crate stood off to one side, prepped and labeled. Victor moved quickly, efficiently logging paperwork with a bored-looking employee behind a glass window. Tyler stayed near Bolt, kneeling beside him, running his hand down the dog's back. Still tense, huh? He whispered. Bolt didn't respond except for the small twitch of his ears. Across the room, a series of unmarked black and gray suitcases rested near a conveyor belt, some tagged for international freight. Unbeknownst to Tyler across the state line, Ranger had not calmed down. Mike had taken him to the edge of the woods behind his house, thinking the open air might soothe the shepherd's strange panic. But Ranger was wild with focus. He had locked onto something beyond Mike's understanding. When they returned to the house, Ranger sprinted past the porch, ran to the window where the TV had been showing the airport coverage earlier, and began scratching furiously at the wooden frame, as if trying to get back into the world inside the screen. Mike, unsettled but unsure what else to do, made a call. Back at JFK, Victor was wrapping up the paperwork when his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, then looked up at Tyler, smiling with that same slick confidence. Hey, you mind giving me a minute? Got to check on a delayed manifest in the South Wing. It'll take 10 max. You can finish crating Bolt. I'll be right back. Tyler nodded. Sure, but didn't look away as Victor exited through a side door. As soon as he was gone, Bolt stood, his posture shifting again, nose twitching aggressively toward the opposite end of the room. Tyler stood with him, following the dog's lead toward the luggage pile. Ordinary bags, nothing strange. But Bolt was now pulling against the leash, growling low. Moments later, in the Central Security office upstairs, the routine login rotation had brought up a live camera feed from Cargo Bay 12B, the very one Bolt had been confined to moments ago. A junior TSA analyst, eating chips from a crumpled bag, paused when he noticed movement in the otherwise quiet feed. A dog, a large German shepherd, was pacing erratically inside a restricted crate zone. Not Bolt. It was a feed from earlier that morning. The file had been tagged automatically by motion sensors, logged and ignored. The analyst, curious, rewound the clip. He watched as Ranger, visiting the terminal with Mike for a scheduled vet transfer, suddenly lunged at a stack of cargo. Specifically, a dark gray suitcase marked VRT-0327 belonging to a Victor Martinez. The dog clawed at it with manic urgency, barking and snapping as if something inside was alive or worse. The footage showed 2 staff members trying to pull him back. One fell. The bag tipped slightly but was resealed and placed back on the belt without being opened. The incident had been marked anomaly behavioral disruption and filed under no further action required. The analyst, unsure what to do with it, clicked flag for supervisor and minimized the window. He went back to his chips. In the basement, Tyler's instincts were sharpening. Bolt was growling now, more directly at a suitcase in the back row. He was fixated. When Tyler stepped closer, Bolt's whole body tensed, tail still ears locked. "Easy boy," Tyler whispered. "What do you smell?" The suitcase looked normal, standard, reinforced black hardshell with an airspan tag, but dogs didn't fixate without cause. Before Tyler could inspect it further, Victor reappeared, stepping back through the same door as before, too quickly for someone who'd walked across a terminal. "Everything good?" he asked, too casually. Tyler stepped away from the bag and nodded, masking his rising suspicion. "Yeah, Bolt's just edgy. New environment?" Victor glanced toward the luggage pile but said nothing. "We're clear to load. The freight cart's outside. He'll be fine. You want to come up with me to the gate?" Tyler hesitated. "You go ahead. I'll say goodbye to him down here." Victor's smile froze for half a second before returning. "Sure thing. See you upstairs." As he left again, Bolt stared at the door. He disappeared through silent now, but unmoving. On the other side of the terminal, Mike was still on hold with Tyler's old CO trying to make sense of Ranger's sudden aggression. "It's not just barking," he kept saying. "He saw something, on TV, a face. I swear to God, I've never seen him like this." His voice shook. Ranger, meanwhile, had stopped pacing and was now sitting at the door staring through it as if waiting to be called. As if waiting for something to happen. The camera footage flagged earlier reached the terminal's senior security officer, who watched the clawing, barking shepherd with a frown. He knew that posture. That wasn't panic. That was identification. He reached for the intercom and called logistics. "I want an unscheduled sweep of crate stack VRT 0327. Right now. Bring in a dog if needed." But there was no dog available. Not one trained enough to challenge what might be hidden there. Not in time. Downstairs, Tyler stepped back from the luggage. His pulse was quicker now, his training shifting gears. Something was wrong. Something deep in his gut told him this wasn't about a misread scent or stress disorder. Bolt had never been wrong before, and neither had Ranger. That suitcase had to be checked. But Tyler was no longer just an observer. He was part of it now. Tyler's boots echoed against the concrete as he exited the cargo corridor, his mind still caught in the static of instinct and suspicion. Bolt had settled reluctantly into his crate, though his gaze had never once shifted from the doorway Victor had disappeared through. The dog's focus was unnatural intense, as if scent alone had mapped out a threat that Tyler could only guess at. With his duffel slung over his shoulder and boarding pass in hand, Tyler made his way toward the gate area, the wide-open concourse stretching before him like a runway of doubt. His thoughts looped back to Ranger. How many times had that dog's instinct saved his life in the field? And now Bolt, so young yet so precise, was behaving the same way, tracking something that felt off, but couldn't be explained in human terms. Victor was already at the gate when Tyler arrived, standing near the windows with a phone pressed to his ear and his free hand resting on the back of a row of connected airport chairs. His posture was stiff, not the relaxed confidence from earlier. Tyler caught just a few words as he approached low and hurried. "Needed on the other side, no scans. No, I said personal handling," before Victor noticed him and ended the call mid-sentence. "Hey," he said, his voice lighter than his expression. Everything squared away, Tyler nodded slowly. "Yeah, just waiting on final boarding. Bolt should be loaded by now." They sat near the gate in relative silence, punctuated only by announcements and the occasional overhead ding of boarding calls. Tyler watched people filter through with headphones, coffee children tugging stuffed animals. A fragile normalcy. But under the surface of his skin, a warning pulse hadn't stopped beating. Victor seemed distracted, checking his watch every few seconds, tapping his foot rapidly despite his otherwise composed demeanor. "Everything all right?" Tyler asked. Victor looked up, blinking as if pulled from somewhere distant. "Yeah, just got a lot going on today. Logistics backlog. You know how it is." Then it happened. Bolt. The sound came first a sharp, chaotic scrape of claws against tile, followed by a panicked shout. Tyler turned just in time to see the Malinois breaking free from a stunned TSA handler near a service corridor, sprinting down the terminal aisle at full speed. People shouted and jumped aside. Luggage toppled. A coffee cup flew into the air, splashing brown arcs onto the floor. "Bolt!" Tyler shouted instinctively, moving to intercept, but it was too late. Bolt's trajectory was locked, ears pinned back, eyes laser-focused on one target. Victor. There was no hesitation. In a blink, Bolt lunged, teeth bared, slamming into Victor's arm with terrifying force. The impact sent them both sideways, Victor screaming in pain as the dog's jaws clamped around his forearm. People shrieked and scrambled back. Phones came out. Security radios crackled to life. Tyler sprinted the final steps, adrenaline surging like a long-forgotten battle cry in his blood. "Bolt off!" He commanded, his voice sharp with urgency. But the dog didn't release immediately. His body was taut with purpose, not rage. His teeth were locked not in chaos, but in controlled restraint. Finally, Tyler reached them, wrapping both arms around Bolt's harness and twisting, applying the pressure he'd been trained to use for emergency detachment. Off now. Bolt released with a wet snap, breath panting, hard eyes wild. Victor crumpled backward against a row of seats, cradling his bleeding arm with a mixture of shock and fury. "What the hell is wrong with that animal?" He barked, his voice strained and hoarse. Blood dripped between his fingers, soaking into the cuff of his shirt. "He just attacked me, unprovoked." Tyler restrained Bolt with both hands, who was now growling, low eyes never leaving Victor's face. "He's never done anything like this," Tyler said, his voice struggling to balance disbelief and control. "Bolt doesn't attack unless there's a reason. He's trained to hold, not injure. You must have done something, triggered something." Victor's eyes flared. "What are you blaming me? I've handled dogs before. He's clearly unstable." He tried to stand, wincing hard, his wounded arm tucked against his chest. "You need to report that animal. Put him down if you can't control him." Tyler flinched at the words, something cold knotting inside him. "Don't you even say that he warned. You don't know him." Something set him off. By now, 2 airport police officers had rushed over, one with a hand on his taser, the other already speaking into his shoulder radio. "What happened here?" the senior one asked, surveying the chaotic scene. Several witnesses were already speaking up, describing the dog's sudden sprint, the attack, the blood. One pointed at Tyler. "That dog came out of nowhere. I think he was supposed to be crated." Victor held up his good hand. "I want a formal report. This is negligence. That dog isn't safe. I want him detained." Tyler looked down at Bolt, who had quieted, but was still trembling, his body still subtly positioned between Victor and himself like a shield. "You're not touching him," Tyler said, more to the officers than to Victor. "I'll cooperate. I'll answer whatever you need, but you lay a hand on him and you'll answer to me." The officer hesitated, caught between protocol and something deeper in Tyler's tone that sounded too close to command. "Sir, for now, we'll need the dog secured until we sort out what happened. You can stay with him. Let's move this somewhere less public." Tyler nodded curtly and clipped Bolt's leash tighter, murmuring something only the dog could hear. "You saw something. I need to know what." As they began to move, Victor muttered loud enough for Tyler to hear. "You bring wild animals into public and expect nothing to happen. You've lost your edge, man. Too much time in the dirt." Tyler stopped walking, turning slowly. "And you've spent too much time hiding behind desks and badges," he said quietly, deadly even. "My edge is still here. And right now, it's telling me you're lying." Victor didn't respond. He just stared, lip-curled, blood dripping from between his knuckles. The hallway ahead led to a small TSA room used for interviews and containment. Tyler walked forward, Bolt beside him, quiet now, but still alert. The officers followed. Unseen by any of them behind a tinted window above Gate B42, a surveillance monitor was looping footage. In frame, the dark suitcase still untouched, still waiting. The crate scan had failed to process. The bag's weight had been slightly over standard, but no alarm had been raised. Inside the bag, something was beginning to move. While Tyler sat tensely inside the narrow TSA holding room, his hands resting firmly on Bolt's collar, the dog still pacing with unease several terminals away and nearly 300 miles north, Ranger was in motion again. Mike had never seen him like this. For a dog nearing the edge of his physical prime, the shepherd moved with the urgency and focus of a young, working K-9 on active duty. He had burst out of the back door the moment it cracked open, bolting across the driveway and into Mike's pickup before the man even managed to call his name. The tailgate hadn't even closed when Ranger launched over it again, nose low to the ground, sniffing madly like the scent trail was fresh, impossibly so. Ranger Mike shouted, barely grabbing his keys before chasing the dog, not knowing what the hell was going on, but certain of one thing: the dog had never led him wrong. When they reached the small rural airport a few miles outside of town, an auxiliary freight route that mostly handled overflow and non-passenger cargo, Ranger was already halfway through the side gate, his powerful body squeezing through a narrow opening between two fencing panels. Security was minimal at best here, especially on weekends, and the facility ran with a skeleton crew. Mike yelled for anyone to stop the dog, but it was too late. Ranger sprinted across the tarmac, zeroing in on a cluster of wooden shipping crates stacked behind a row of freight containers. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he just ran. When he reached the farthest crate, a rough, unmarked wooden box about 4 feet long and 2 feet tall, he skidded to a halt and immediately began clawing at the front teeth, bared nostrils flaring. It was the same behavior he used in field work during scent identifications, except this wasn't a training scenario or a demonstration. This was something else. Mike reached him moments later, out of breath, heart pounding. "Jesus, Ranger, what the hell's gotten into you?" he asked, trying to pull him back. But the dog was locked in, focused. He pawed and scratched at the crate with frantic precision, nails tearing at the soft grain of the pine as if trying to uncover a body. A young staffer named Cody, who had been managing weekend intake on a clipboard, finally noticed the commotion. "Sir, that area's restricted," he called out, approaching with a half-apologetic, half-worried tone. Mike stood, sweat beading under his cap. "I'm sorry, he caught a scent. This dog used to work with Customs Narcotics military field work. I think he's onto something." Cody raised an eyebrow. "Seriously, that crate just came off a truck from Jersey, supposed to be headed to JFK tonight for final sorting. Manifest delayed, though. There's no ID tag on it yet. We were going to sort it later." Mike shook his head. "Then you better check it now." Cody hesitated, then looked down at Ranger, still digging like his life depended on it. "All right," he muttered, turning to grab a crowbar from a nearby tool bench. "But if I lose my job over this, I'm blaming the dog." With a grunt, he wedged the crowbar into the lid seam and popped it loose. The top clattered to the floor. Dust and straw puffed upward. Inside, beneath a dense layer of hay and bubble wrap, was a series of vacuum-sealed packs. Cody's face wrinkled as he pulled one free and inspected the label. "Ketasset," he read aloud. "Animal tranquilizer, strong stuff. Some vets use it for horses." Mike peered closer. "That's not standard shipment packaging. Who the hell sends this stuff? Unregistered?" Cody looked back at him, frowning now. "This isn't just strong. It's regulated. You need a DEA license to move more than 100 milliliters at a time. This crate has liters of it. Whoever sent this was trying to hide it." They turned toward Ranger, who had sat down, now panting hard, gaze still locked on the crate. Mike pulled out his phone. "I need to call someone," he said, scrolling. "And you should flag this shipment, put it on hold. You got a log of who dropped it off?" Cody nodded slowly. "Kind of. Not great cameras, but I'll check." A wave of adrenaline passed between them. Both men understanding, now this wasn't just a dog gone rogue, it was a trained animal, pointing to something illegal, something deliberate. Back at JFK, Tyler was growing increasingly impatient. The TSA agents had filed an initial report, but despite the intensity of the incident, they were surprisingly slow to react further. Victor had been treated and moved to a private medical lounge conveniently out of sight. No charges filed, no questions asked. Tyler wasn't naive, he'd seen this pattern before. Something was being swept. He asked twice to speak with the security chief. Denied. Asked again to inspect the cargo manifest for Bolt's crate transfer. Delayed. Bolt, meanwhile, remained on edge, stationed at Tyler's side like a shadow. It wasn't over. The tension in his stance said it plainly. Then Tyler's phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. The text read, "Mike here. Ranger found something. You need to see this. Video incoming." Moments later, a file popped up, grainy cell footage of Ranger clawing at the crate, followed by Cody opening it and revealing the packages. Tyler's chest tightened. Ketaset. His mind clicked back to Kandahar, to the compound bust where cartel runners had used the same drug to subdue watchdogs during a high-level raid. This wasn't some random shipment. It was a known method, one Tyler had seen used to silence patrol dogs before smuggling human cargo. It was a weapon, just not the kind you fired. He stood quickly, grabbing his duffel. "We're done here," he said to the nearest officer. "I've got evidence of a related shipment tied to the incident earlier. You're going to either help me file it, or I'm walking it straight to Homeland." The officer blinked. "Sir, we need clearance, then get it." Tyler snapped. "Or call your supervisor, I'm not letting this go." He showed the video, the name of the crate, the timestamp. It all fit. The officer muttered something into his radio, and a few minutes later, Tyler and Bolt were escorted back toward the cargo hold. Bolt pulled hard on the leash, sensing the shift. The wooden crate Ranger had flagged was now in motion. A ground crew forklift had moved it to a side bay marked Internal Recheck. The area was locked, the lights dimmed. As they approached, Bolt began to growl again, his eyes fixed on something further down the corridor, something Tyler couldn't see yet. The corridor beyond the locked cargo bay pulsed with a humming silence, broken only by the distant sound of rollers whirring and forklifts shifting weight. Tyler's boots landed heavy on the ground. His every step measured eyes sharp and scanning. Bolt moved beside him with surgical precision, his body-low nose twitching. The dog was vibrating with tension, the kind Tyler hadn't seen since their last live drill in Fort Bliss, except this wasn't training. This was instinct. Bolt wasn't reacting to Tyler or the environment. He was tracking something. And Tyler, without needing words, knew exactly what it was. They rounded the corner where the crate had been placed in temporary isolation, and Bolt stopped cold. No barking, no charging, just that sharp, primal stiffness, ears rigid, tail frozen, mouth closed. Tyler raised a hand, signaling to the two officers behind them to stay back. "Let me take this," he said quietly. No one argued. He approached the crate slowly, eyes narrowing. The air smelled metallic, sharp, chemically sour under the industrial lights. A scent that didn't belong in airport cargo. His fingers brushed the side of the wooden panel where it had been pried open earlier. There were no shipment labels still, no ID, no country of origin, no airway tag. Someone had tried hard to make this crate invisible. And it had almost worked. Then Bolt let out a short guttural growl deep in his chest, not aggression alert. Tyler knew the sound. He'd heard it countless times in Afghanistan, especially during sweep patrols when they suspected chemical agents or bioweapons in insurgent safe houses. But this time that sound reached somewhere else in him. It wasn't just the present that was warning him, it was memory. It came back all at once. Kandahar Province, winter of 2016. A remote checkpoint just outside a ruined mosque, late afternoon light cutting through the smoke of a nearby burn pit. Tyler had been there with Ranger working a rotational scan of supply vehicles coming through the perimeter. Victor had been assigned to internal logistics back then, managing clearances on the inside. On that day, everything had felt off the radio chatter too quiet, the guards too still. Then Ranger had signaled just like Bolt did now, locking onto a civilian transport with 3 sealed crates. Tyler had called it in, but Victor had overruled the scan, citing redundant clearance. They were undermanned, short on time. Tyler had pushed back, but command had sided with Victor. Trust the manifest, they said. 48 hours later, 3 soldiers at the next forward operating base went down hard, one in critical condition after being exposed to trace aerosolized compounds embedded in food packaging. Non-lethal, but close. An investigation followed. The shipment never properly tagged. The chemical trace never traced back to its origin. But Tyler remembered Victor's face when the base CO confronted them both, tight pale jaw locked behind the buzz cut. The official record said the breach was a systems error, but Tyler always suspected otherwise. Victor had walked with a warning. He got transferred within the month, quietly. Some said demotion. Others said he'd been caught cutting corners, letting certain handlers slip packages through in exchange for favors. Nothing proven, but Tyler never forgot. Now, staring down this crate with Bolt frozen in the exact same stance Ranger had taken years ago, the past slammed into the present like a freight train. "This isn't random," he said out loud, his voice flat. The officers looked confused. Sir One asked. Tyler stood upright, staring past the box into the steel veins of the airport that suddenly felt like enemy territory. This exact signal Bolt's posture, the way he holds his mouth, that's chemical exposure. Something in this crate triggered it. The junior officer stepped forward, uncertain. "The manifest says veterinary supplies." Tyler turned his head sharply. "Yeah, tell me where the manifest is, 'cause last time I checked this crate still has no ID." The officer hesitated. "We logged the opening earlier, but no sender yet. Just a manual drop and go. Could have been rerouted." Tyler looked at Bolt again, then back at the crate. "Then someone made sure this cargo stayed dark. I need gloves. A mask, if you got one." One of the men handed him a pair from the emergency kit locker by the wall. Tyler crouched, snapping the gloves on tight, and gently peeled back a layer of insulation from the opened panel. Under the hay and packaging sat not just the sealed vials from earlier, but a black pouch, half-zipped, shoved deep in the corner. He reached in heart-pounding and pulled it free. Inside were 5 syringe casings, each preloaded, each labeled only with numbers, and a chemical prefix that Tyler instantly recognized, MTX-38K, not veterinary. This was a sedative compound developed during narcotics raids, powerful enough to drop a full-grown adult unconscious within 30 seconds. Untraceable after 2 hours. Manufactured under military contract and later banned for field use due to its abuse potential. He looked up slowly. "You need to lock this area down. Now." As the officers radioed for command backup, Tyler stepped away, pulling out his phone. Hands trembling only slightly, he tapped into the encrypted contact folder that hadn't seen daylight since he left the Army. He hit the name labeled M. Wren, Inter-Intel Liaison. It rang once. Meanwhile, in the rural airstrip where Ranger had first reacted, Mike was still trying to calm the dog. But Ranger wasn't calming. Instead, he had begun circling the fence perimeter, tail-stiff eyes darting. He was tracking something or someone. It was as if the scent from the crate had triggered not only recognition, but a second layer of alert, one tied to human presence. And that scent, Ranger knew, had belonged to a man once trusted and now hidden under layers of lies. Back at JFK, Tyler's call connected, ran its cross. "We have a chemical trace confirmed. Unauthorized compound tied to crate VRT-0327. Manifest falsified. Potential connection to former logistics asset Victor Martinez." There was a pause on the line, then a voice came through, sharp and precise. "Did you say Victor?" Tyler closed his eyes. "I think he's running something, and I think I've only scratched the surface." From his position outside the cargo bay, Bolt suddenly snapped his head toward the stairwell. A shadow moved fast behind the frosted glass, too fast for ground crew too focused to be lost. Tyler looked up. "Someone's here," he whispered. And then he started walking. Tyler barely had time to round the corner when the corridor flooded with new voices, sharper movements, and the telltale rhythm of a shift in protocol. He caught the sound of radio chatter rising behind him, calls for supervisors' mentions of incident escalation. The crate area was now officially flagged security red-taped, and 2 TSA agents were busy filing visual reports, while Bolt remained at Tyler's side, still coiled like a spring. Tyler's phone buzzed again, this time a formal message from the airport's legal department. Re-Property Damage Claim, VRT 0327. The attached note was, Kurt Official, an Airspan logistics attorney, has filed a complaint on behalf of a contracted courier regarding alleged mishandling and destruction of property. The complaint references improper access and damage to sealed freight under federal protection. Tyler frowned. So someone was already covering tracks. The crate with the illegal sedative had a courier attached to it, and now that courier had lawyered up. That meant they weren't just hiding behind paperwork, they were counting on it. Within minutes, Tyler was pulled aside by a senior investigator from the airport's internal risk team, a middle-aged woman named Harlan, whose tone walked the tightrope between bureaucratic patience and institutional pressure. "Mr. Cross," she said, eyes flicking to Bolt, "you've been mentioned in an incident involving assault by animal unauthorized access to restricted cargo, and now a possible federal violation due to destruction of private freight. Care to explain what exactly you were doing in the crate area?" Tyler met her gaze without flinching. "Following my dog's instincts, and trust me, those instincts just saved this terminal from becoming a pipeline for black market sedatives." Harlan raised an eyebrow. "So, you're saying you broke protocol because your dog barked?" "No," Tyler replied. "I followed protocol because my memory barked. And because a man named Victor Martinez has been playing both sides of this terminal for longer than you know. That name, Victor Martinez, landed in the air like a dropped weight." Harlan shifted slightly. "We've spoken to Mr. Martinez. He claims he's the victim of a misidentification and assault. He also says the suitcase in question is unrelated to the crate contents." Tyler didn't respond. Instead, he took a step toward her, lowering his voice. "Then, give me access to the surveillance tapes. Let me show you something you missed." Harlan hesitated. "Only security review can authorize playback." "Then I'll do it quietly," Tyler said. "Off the books. You don't have to sign off on anything. I just need 20 minutes in the observation room." Surprisingly, she nodded. Inside the small, dim-lit room above the concourse, Tyler sat alone before a multi-screen console, fingers flying over the interface. He'd been through this drill more times than he could count during active-duty tracing movement logging timestamps identifying patterns. With Bolt seated at the door like a loyal sentinel, Tyler accessed archived feeds from the previous 48 hours, beginning with the time of Ranger's original reaction at the rural airport. Then he synced it to JFK's intake timestamps and filtered the camera views by Gate G12, where Victor had first intercepted Tyler upon arrival, rewinding, fast-forwarding, pausing. The pattern began to emerge like ink in water. Frame 1, Victor entering the restricted cargo hold at 0722, alone with no listed access badge on record. Frame 2, Victor, walking beside an Airspan employee pushing a cart stacked with 2 suitcases, one of which matched the untagged crate that Bolt and Ranger had both identified. Victor nodded to the employee, then looked around before glancing directly at the ceiling camera. In the next frame, he stepped slightly to the side, subtly blocking the view of the suitcase as the employee adjusted something near the wheels. Frame 3, Victor passing a checkpoint 30 minutes later, but not taking the standard route where dogs were routinely posted. Instead, he diverted through a less trafficked corridor, one where K9 units were notably absent. Tyler paused that feed, leaning back in his chair. Avoiding the dogs, he muttered, because he knows they'd alert. He kept digging. The deeper he went, the clearer the behavior became. Victor repeatedly used off-hour windows to escort baggage, sometimes without any staff, always with the same sequence: arrive alone, stall near non-camera zones, bypass K9 scans, and disappear for just long enough to move something undetected. And it wasn't just one crate. Tyler pulled at the thread, tracking down matching serial timestamps and matching luggage tags. 3 shipments over 2 weeks, all unmanifested, all routed through Victor's oversight. His chest tightened. This wasn't sloppiness. It was a pattern. It was a system. Just then, a low whine broke the silence. Bolt. He had shifted closer to the viewing window, his ears back nose pressed to the glass. Tyler stood and followed his gaze. Down below in the central hall, Victor was back, walking calmly beside a suited man with a briefcase and talking rapidly. The man didn't look like legal counsel, he looked like muscle in disguise. The two disappeared through a side door leading toward the logistics wing. Tyler clenched his jaw. They weren't just planning damage control, they were planning their exit. Back in the console, Tyler saved key footage clips to a secure folder and marked each one with a timestamp cross-referenced with entry logs. He forwarded it to Wren. The message was short proof of pattern. Martinez is facilitating illegal transfers. He's bypassed at least 3 K9 units in under 2 weeks. Crate 0327 wasn't an accident, it's part of something larger. Bolt let out another small growl. Tyler didn't need more confirmation. It was time to move. As he stepped out of the control room, Harlan reappeared, face more serious now. I heard you pulled footage. You realize that could cost you your clearance if it wasn't approved. Tyler nodded. If I'm wrong, I'll take the hit. But if I'm right, we have a leak in your system who's about to disappear. Where's Victor now? Harlan hesitated. He said he needed to check on the courier complaint. Said he had a meeting upstairs. Tyler stared at her. Then we're already behind him. Tyler's boots struck the tiled floor with renewed purpose as he exited the surveillance deck and moved toward the central terminal offices. Bolt stayed close, his gait swift, and focused every muscle alive with instinct. The footage he'd reviewed had stripped the last shadows of doubt from Tyler's mind. Victor was actively facilitating illegal shipments, and whatever was in those crates and suitcases wasn't just narcotics or veterinary sedatives. The patterns, the smuggling behavior, the deliberate avoidance of K9 sweeps it all, screamed of a deeper operation, one with financial and strategic sophistication. By the time Tyler reached the internal security hub, Harlan had already made a call. The Department of Homeland Security's Wildlife Trafficking Division had been looped in, and within the hour, a small response team led by Special Agent Riley Estevez had arrived, credentials sharp, expressions sharper. Riley was a tall, wiry woman in her 40s, with a no-nonsense stride and sharp gray eyes that flicked from Bolt to Tyler like she was triangulating pressure points before saying a word. "You're the one who flagged the compound," she said, voice clipped. Tyler nodded. "That's not the whole story. I think your case just crossed over with something dirtier." "You ever worked against live animal smuggling rings?" Riley's brow arched. 3 years in Panama. Seized an entire shipment of sedated jaguar cubs and rare parrots being funneled through cruise liner ports. Why Tyler didn't respond at first. Instead, he pulled out his phone and played a snippet of the flagged footage, the one where Victor and the airspan handler obscure the suitcase from view. Riley leaned in. "What was in that bag we don't know yet," Tyler said. "But I have reason to believe Victor's not just running compound sedatives. I think he's moving animals live, rare, smuggled through under anesthetic. Ranger, my old K9, just flagged a crate with sedative trace and unknown organic scent, and Ranger doesn't miss." It took less than 20 minutes for the DHS team to trace Victor's steps back to a mid-level cargo locker in Terminal C, an isolated storage zone used for late check-ins and delayed manifests. By the time they arrived, Victor was nowhere to be seen. But the locker had been recently accessed. Logs showed entry 28 minutes earlier under Victor's clearance code. Riley ordered the team to open the metal unit. As the latch creaked and the door swung open, the inside revealed a single hard-shell suitcase resting in the center. Bolt stiffened instantly, his body locking with that now familiar alert tension. Riley stepped forward, slid on gloves, and slowly unzipped the main compartment. At first glance, it seemed like nothing. Rolled shirts, a travel blanket, a shaving kit. But beneath the base layer, compressed beneath a false bottom, they found a secondary compartment unmarked, sealed, and faintly warm. "Thermal-lined," Riley muttered. "To preserve internal body temperature." She carefully cut through the lining with a blade. The suitcase gave a sudden shift, and then a soft, sluggish movement stirred from inside. Riley drew back the flap slowly. Inside, wrapped in gauze, barely conscious and visibly dazed, was a large South American parrot, scarlet red with iridescent green tail feathers and a ringed collar. Its breathing was shallow, but steady pupils dilated from chemical interference. Bolt let out a soft whine. Tyler knelt beside the case, eyeing the bird's slow blinking. "It's drugged," he said. "Probably Ketased again. Enough to keep it quiet for transport but not kill it." Riley pulled out a scanner and swept it over the bird's leg. A chip pinged, but the registry came up as null, altered. She glanced at her team. No export record. This bird was stolen, likely trafficked from a breeder in Colombia or Peru. Street value north of $40,000. Tyler exhaled slowly. That explains the shipment behavior. These aren't just one-offs. Victor's built a route that pushes high-value animals through airport systems using gaps in protocol and relationships he leveraged from his military logistics background. Riley nodded grimly. And if he's working with handlers overseas, this is bigger than airport fraud. This is international wildlife crime. They moved quickly from there. The suitcase was secured, the bird sent to a wildlife vet on standby, and the locker sealed as a federal crime scene. But one more step remained. Ranger. At Tyler's request, Mike had been flown in with Ranger on the next available government-chartered transport. The older dog, despite his age, still moved with purpose as he stepped onto JFK's tarmac that night, eyes sweeping the runway as if he'd never retired. Tyler met them near the DHS command vehicle, kneeling as Ranger approached. "Still got that look in your eye," he murmured, scratching behind the shepherd's ear. Mike handed over the lead. He hasn't stopped pacing since the plane lifted off. "You better show him what he's here for." Ranger was guided directly to the storage locker where the suitcase had been found. The room still carried the residue of scent chemicals, stress, sweat, and animal fear. Riley opened the door, let Ranger inside, and stepped back. The dog didn't hesitate. He sniffed once, then locked in. Ears backtail, stiff, pawing at the base of the wall where the suitcase had rested. Tyler exchanged a glance with Riley. Same alert posture he used in Kandahar. Same reaction when he picked up on concealed chemical traces. Except this time it's both. Riley crouched beside Ranger and held out a piece of the travel blanket recovered from the suitcase. Ranger sniffed it, then growled. Not loudly, but enough. Riley's expression tightened. That's a confirmation. Tyler stood. This bird, this bag, it's not just contraband, it's the thread that ties everything together. From the crate with MTX 38K to the unscanned bags to the forged manifests. Every shipment leads back to Victor. He's been running this op for months, maybe longer. And he's using his security clearance to walk past the very systems designed to catch people like him. They didn't need more. DHS had enough to issue a warrant. All they had to do now was find Victor before he vanished. Bolt shifted beside Tyler. Then out of nowhere, the radio on Riley's hip crackled. "Be advised, subject, Martinez just breached South Terminal exit. Surveillance lost him after Gate 9 stairwell. All teams mobilize. Repeat, all teams code 3. Tyler's pulse quickened. Bolt let out a sharp bark, already pulling toward the door as if he'd seen it before Tyler had. Ranger growled, low muscles, tensing gaze fixed on the shadows outside. Victor Martinez burst through the emergency exit at Terminal C like a man, unhinged eyes, frantic suit jacket, flapping arms, swinging in desperation as he tried to navigate the maze of corridors past shuttered concession stands and scattered passengers fleeing the battleground behind him. Tyler Cross and Special Agent Riley Estevez sprinted after Bolt and Ranger close at their heels. Victor's departure triggered a cacophony of alarms, audible dings at restricted doors, radio alerts sounding in the distance, and the muffled rumble of crowds pushing toward main exits. The terminal had turned into a riot of controlled chaos. Tyler crashed into Victor's retreat path seconds after the fugitive passed beneath an illuminated sign reading "No Entry." "Stop!" Tyler shouted. Victor skidded to a halt as if yanked backwards by an invisible leash. He spun eyes wild gaze, flicking between Tyler and the two dogs, Bolt, growling Ranger, standing firm-tail rigid. "What do you want?" Victor hissed, chest-heaving voice desperate. "You're done, Victor. We have evidence. We know about the crates, the sedatives, the live animal trafficking. DHS is on their way." Victor laughed a cracked, hysterical sound with raw tension in every syllable. "You think you've won? You don't know what I've done." He swung his arms, pacing back and forth in an unstable arc. I needed the money, Cross. You don't get it. You're retired, you got a farm. A dog that doesn't eat like an investment. I got debts, bad debts. Tyler tilted his head, frowning. What debts? Victor's face twisted. Bookies underground. I lost. Big. Hundreds of thousands. They came calling. And I realized, I've got access to the terminal to cargo to bypass scanners. It's perfect. I can pass a crate unnoticed, no dogs, no manifest, just cash and silence. He spat the last word like blood, and I pulled it off. A few times. Undetected until you and your mutt show up. Tyler clenched his fists. You used your clearance. You used the only thing meant to keep this place safe. I trusted you. Victor's eyes glistened with tears, or maybe sweat. I didn't have a choice. Teller died because of me. My wife, she left. I had nothing. He glanced down past Tyler's shoulder and froze. Ty looked behind him too. A small child, no more than 7, stood in the center of the corridor clutching a plush toy. A rolling suitcase had tipped over just behind her, spilling contents. A startled mother hovered by the exit sign, frozen. The suitcase rested inches from the girl's foot. Ranger reacted instantly. He lunged between the cases, and the girl, pressing himself flush to the rolling luggage so hard that the suitcase stopped. The toddler took a step back, eyes wide, hugging her doll tighter. Ranger's body blocked the entire toppling case. Tyler let out a low shout, "Ranger, good boy." The dog stayed planted until the pressing PA announcement, "Please evacuate calmly. All security personnel proceed with caution," caused a lull in chaos. Only then did Ranger relax, stepping aside to allow orderly exit. The mother swooped onto her knees and scooped the girl into her arms, tears in both their eyes. An airport official saw it, pressed a button on his vest, "Commendation Team to Terminal C." A small group of uniformed staff approached Ranger with badges. They knelt, patted his head, and attached commendation ribbons. Bolt looked on, tail wagging softly. Victor stared at Ranger in stunned silence. He looked away. Tyler guided Bolt closer and stood between Ranger and Victor, fists unclenched. "He saved a kid," Tyler said quietly. "Your mess nearly hurt a child." Victor swallowed, looking down at the floor. "I didn't think," he began, voice hollow. "I'm sorry." Tyler kept his voice firm. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You endangered lives. You endangered children." Victor's shoulders slumped. He lifted his shirt sleeve to reveal bruised marks where Bolt had bitten him. "I deserved that," he said, voice flat. "I would do anything to take it back." Riley appeared, handcuffs at the ready. "Mr. Martinez." She gestured calmly but firmly. "You're under arrest for trafficking sedatives and endangered wildlife. Any attempt to flee will result in additional charges." Victor closed his eyes and nodded. He straightened, giving Tyler a colder-than-expected look that softened the moment after no defiance, just weary acceptance. "Thank you," he whispered, though it wasn't for Tyler. Tyler didn't respond. He offered a nod. That was all. Ranger strutted to Tyler, chest shimmering with the ribbon pinned to his harness. Tyler knelt, hugged him. Bolt hopped up in excitement, tongue lolling. Riley helped handcuff Victor, dragging him toward a waiting DHS van. Before he climbed in, Victor's eyes met Tyler's one last time. "I never wanted it to come to this." Then he entered the vehicle and was driven away. The swarm around Ranger intensified, commuters taking photos, staff shaking hands with Tyler, patting Bolt, and congratulating them all. The little girl's mother approached with a laminated card. "This was from the commendation, you get, all of you." She handed the card to Tyler, her voice trembling. "He saved her life." Tyler held it out, glancing at Ranger, Bolt, and then the steady lines of the terminal sliding back into normalcy. He realized the operation was far from over. Victor might be locked up, but his network, his routes, the sedatives. The sedated animals. Tyler looked at Riley. "We need a full sweep of international cargo routes tied to Victor in the past 6 months. Every crate, every bag." Riley nodded, already pulling up manifests on her tablet. "We'll get agents on every terminal. We'll unravel the chain." Tyler looked down at Ranger's ribbon. "Good dog." Ranger nudged his hand, quiet and steadfast. Bolt hopped up and licked Tyler's face. Tyler exhaled. The crowd buzzed on around them. The ribbon was just a piece of metal. The real reward was here quiet loyalty earned through something much bigger than a terminal, and something far more dangerous. The loudspeakers resumed normal announcements, baggage claims, flight boards. America's busiest airport day shifted back into cruise mode. Among the flow, one old K-9 soldier and his partner stood as proof that even in chaos, trust in instinct, loyalty, and unspoken bonds remained the strongest defenses. The airport lights shimmered under the early morning haze, casting a muted glow across the quieted tarmac as the last of the DHS teams filed out their reports, finalized evidence tagged, and Victor Martinez officially processed for federal crimes. The headlines had already begun to form: former logistics officer behind multi-state animal trafficking ring caught by retired K-9. It wasn't long before officials from the National K-9 Registry arrived, their uniforms clean and pressed their posture formal but warm. One of them, a gray-haired man named Barrett, approached Tyler with a small velvet box in hand. "This is for him," he said, simply kneeling beside Ranger and attaching a polished medal to the dog's vest, one that read, K-9, Valor Recognition, Active Interdiction Assist. It was the first time in 10 years a retired dog had been posthumously reinstated and awarded active status in a federal bust. Tyler crouched beside them, hand resting gently on Ranger's back as the cameras flashed. "You never stopped being that dog," he whispered, voice catching. They just stopped looking. The press gathered outside were kept at bay by security, but the footage of Ranger's protection of the little girl and his decisive role in the drugged animal recovery had already gone viral. Overnight, the old shepherd had become a symbol not just of loyalty but of the importance of never underestimating instinct even after retirement. Riley watched it all unfold, arms crossed, a soft smile forming. "He saved more than that, kid," she said to Tyler. "He cracked open a network that's been smuggling exotic species from Florida to Quebec, and we would have missed it if not for his nose and your gut." Tyler nodded, gaze drifting to Bolt, who lay beside them now, calmer than ever, eyes no longer shifting in jealousy or unease whenever Ranger moved near. It had taken time. Those first few days after the bust, Ranger still moved with the precision of a commander, while Bolt, younger and more energetic, defaulted to observation. But something had changed. It began on the third morning when Tyler brought both dogs out into the backyard of his modest Virginia farmhouse. The fog had settled low over the fields, and Tyler, coffee in hand, watched as Bolt ran loops across the perimeter, tail-wagging tongue flopping in the wind. Ranger, ever the sentinel, stood firm at the porch steps until Bolt stopped, looked back, and barked short and light. Tyler tensed, expecting resistance. But then, surprisingly, Ranger stepped forward, followed the younger dog toward the oak tree near the fence, and within minutes the two were trotting side by side, neither leading nor following, just sharing space. That had been the turning point. Since then, their rhythm had begun to align. Bolt learned patience. Ranger softened his guard. It was during one of those walks that Tyler made his decision. There'd been an offer from a respected K-9 therapy group in D.C. to adopt Ranger and let him spend his days in quiet comfort. Another handler from Texas wanted to take Bolt for competition work. But Tyler knew neither belonged away from him or from each other. He filled out the paperwork himself, signed both adoption certificates that evening, and posted them by the fridge with a magnet shaped like a bone. One home, 2 dogs, no more stations, no more crates. When the official reinstatement arrived in the mail, Tyler framed it next to his military discharge papers. Ranger's name was listed not only as an honored K-9 operative, but as a contributing agent to a federal bust. Bolt's name, too, though newer to service, had been added as a supporting asset in evidence identification. They were in every sense partners now, not just to each other, but to Tyler. He often caught them lying together under the porch, Ranger dozing, while Bolt nestled into his shoulder, the sunset casting long golden lines across the ground. One evening, as cicadas hummed and the sky shifted to burnt orange, Tyler sat on the steps of the porch, whiskey in hand, watching the dogs stretch after their nap. "Funny," he said aloud, voice gravelly but soft. "You two started out at war." Ranger raised his head slightly. Bolt let out a low huff, then trotted over, pressing his nose to Tyler's knee. "Now look at you," Tyler chuckled. "Two damn legends under one roof." Yet, in the back of his mind, something remained unfinished. The morning of the ceremony unfolded beneath a pale sky streaked with early autumn sunlight, the air crisp but gentle, as dozens gathered near Terminal C's open-air concourse where a temporary platform had been erected beneath the fluttering flag of the United States. Rows of chairs held members of TSA-DHS airport security and media outlets, their badges and press passes glinting under the rising sun, while families, children, and off-duty officers mingled quietly near the back, many drawn not by the headlines but by something deeper, a desire to witness the conclusion of a story that had, over the past 10 days, become more than just a news cycle. At the edge of the platform, two dogs sat calmly in front of the American flag, one with weathered eyes and a graying snout, the other younger ears, alert tail twitching only slightly, as if resisting his usual bursts of energy. Ranger and Bolt. On their left stood Tyler Cross, uniform pressed hands steady at his sides, and though no insignia marked his chest anymore, the air around him still carried the presence of command, tempered now with something quieter, more personal. As the national anthem faded and the MC stepped forward, a hush fell over the crowd. Today, the woman began, her voice carrying across the breeze. "We honor not just an act of courage, but a legacy of loyalty, of instinct, partnership, and memory. Because sometimes the truth is found not in documents or testimony, but in a silent warning, a steady paw, and a heart that never forgets." The applause that followed was warm, not thunderous, more respectful than celebratory, but when the ceremonial medallion was placed around Ranger's neck, polished silver engraved with the phrase, "For honor beyond duty," many in the crowd stood in spontaneous salute. Flashbulbs sparked as Tyler knelt beside Ranger and Bolt, one hand resting on each of their shoulders, and in that moment, captured across news feeds, agency websites, and photojournalism reels, a narrative settled into place: the soldier who listened, the young dog who learned, and the old dog who remembered. The image swept across the country within hours. Networks aired retrospective segments on K-9 units, interviews with former handlers who recalled Ranger's career from raids in Afghanistan to security missions in Manhattan, and social media exploded with tributes. Some heroes don't speak one caption read paired with a slow-motion video of Ranger stepping down from the platform, Tyler's voice off-screen saying simply, "That'll do." Meanwhile, Victor Martinez sat in a holding cell at a federal detention center just outside D.C., the quiet hum of fluorescent lights overhead, broken only by the shuffling of legal folders and the occasional echo of boots down the hallway. His trial would begin within the month, and the evidence against him was airtight smuggling logs, forged clearance codes, chemical compound shipping data, and perhaps most damning of all, the recovered suitcase with the sedated parrot and his fingerprints smeared across the lining. Yet, what lingered wasn't just the weight of justice. It was the final glance Ranger had given him on the tarmac, that brief second when animal met man, and neither needed words to understand that memory, once carved deep enough, never truly faded. Back at the airfield, the crowd slowly dispersed. Children were still pointing at the dog, some leaning close to pet Bolt, who wagged happily now, playful again. Ranger remained more reserved, eyes steady, movements slow, but sure the way of someone who had spent years in noise and now preferred quiet. Tyler stood near the far railing overlooking the runway where planes rose into the blue like echoes of stories beginning and ending in turns. Riley approached, sunglasses tucked in her front pocket, a file in her hand. "We finished sweeping Victor's contact lists," she said. "His reach was broader than we thought: 7 states, 2 foreign ports, 3 airports compromised. But we shut it all down. You started that." Tyler shrugged, not out of false modesty, but because he knew it hadn't been him alone. "Ranger did," he said. "I just listened." Riley glanced down at the 2 dogs lying beside him, now heads touching the elder and the apprentice, not so different after all. "You keepin' them both?" she asked. Tyler smiled. "Wouldn't split 'em now, even if I could." That night, back on the farm under a sky freckled with stars and the steady drone of cicadas, Tyler sat on the porch steps, a blanket around his shoulders, a mug of tea cooling in his hands. Bolt lay at his feet, snoring softly, while Ranger rested a few yards away near the old oak tree. Eyes closed, but ears still twitching as if listening to a world only he could hear. The air was peaceful, undisturbed by the chaos that had brought them together. Tyler thought about all the threads, the instincts, the warnings ignored, the ones finally heard, and how a simple act of trust in a dog's refusal to forget had unraveled a crime and rewritten a legacy. He stood stretched and walked over to Ranger kneeling beside him. The dog opened his eyes, calm and clear, and for a moment Tyler didn't speak. Then he whispered, "You remember everything, don't you?" Ranger blinked slowly. Tyler scratched behind his ears the way he always had. "Thank you for not letting it go." And as the wind passed through the grass and the porch light flickered warm and steady, the past, the present, and whatever came next settled around them like dust after a storm, quiet, grounded, and whole. If this story moved you, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part hit you the hardest? Was it Ranger's instinct, Bolt's growth, or Tyler's quiet strength? And by the way, where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading them all.